Yeah.
Okay, I think we should go ahead and get started. This is Kathleen Cooling, and I'm the Vice President of the St. Helena Historical Society. And I'm joining you tonight from the Heritage Center on Oak Avenue in St. Helena. So I'm not sure if you can see me or not, but behind me is the old carriage that was donated by the McCormick family. I'd like to remind everybody that you should be on mute, and you should stay on mute until the Q&A session after the lecture. And then you can unmute yourself after the lecture is over, and you can ask a question, either, just unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can use the little chat button that's on toward the bottom of your screen. And if you hover your cursor over the chat, it'll come up, and then you can type your question in the box, and I'll be keeping track of those. As Mariam mentioned, we are recording the presentation and the Q&A so we can post it on our new YouTube channel. The name of the new channel is St. Helena Historical Society Lecture Series. So welcome everyone to the first lecture in the 2022 Susanne Salvestrin Memorial Lecture Series. These lectures honor Susanne Salvestrin's memory by sharing with our community the stories of early St. Helena, a community that Susanne cared so deeply about throughout her life. Susanne was instrumental in the founding of the St. Helena Historical Society and was the driving force and inspiration for the establishment of our new Heritage Center. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker tonight, Ms. Mariam Hansen. Mariam probably is known to most of you, but I'll just remind you that she is the research director of the Historical Society. And in that role, she's responsible for the research activities that support the heart of our mission, which is to collect, preserve, exhibit, interpret, and provide access to the history of the St. Helena area. Mariam was born and raised in St. Helena and is an expert in the history of this area. She was actively involved with the founding of the Historical Society in 2002 and has been a volunteer for 19 years. The title of her talk tonight is Napa County of Stone Bridges. So Mariam, the floor is yours.
Okay. Welcome everybody to this talk about our beautiful stone bridges in Napa County. All right. So the 1895 biennial report of the California Bureau of Highways, which is now Caltrans, said, the economy and permanence of stone bridges are seen in the example set by Napa County. The stone bridges built after the mid-1890s were replacements for old wooden spans which had served many years. At the urging of Supervisor Achilles Grigsby, father of Napa County stone bridges, worn wooden bridges were replaced by stone due to low cost and maintenance. Scotsman Robert H. Pithie was a famous stone builder of the time who started the trend. He was born in Stonehaven, Scotland in 1854. Pithie also worked on the buildings at Stanford University, and he built the Ritchie Block and the St. Helena Star building in downtown St. Helena. Now, after Pithie's death at the early age of 47, most of the stone bridges were built by James B. Newman. He came from England in the 1870s, and in 1878, he opened the Napa Marble and Granite Works, which is still in business today, under this ownership of the Simich family. Newman's primary occupation was carving headstones and crypts. Napa County became known as the County of Stone Bridges, with more than 60 spanning our waterways. The stones were usually quarried as near to the bridge as possible. After the county civil engineer designed and selected the site, the builder would examine it and set up quarrying. The rough stone was carted to the site where heavy timber falsework was built to shape the arches. Bridges were built outward from the footings to the center, where a keystone was dropped in. Then the sidewalls were built, the dirt filled in, and capstones were laid. Our first bridge is the Pope Street Bridge over the Napa River, 1894, built by R.H. Pithie. For years, the wooden bridge spanning the Napa River at Pope Street has been a menace to life, wrote the St. Helena Star. As the gateway through which the people of Howell Mountain, Pope, Childs, and Conn valleys must pass, St. Helena people realized for a long time the necessity of a new bridge. When the new St. Helena Board of Trustees was sworn into office, swift action was taken. The members, under the leadership of Dr. Henry Pond, who was then the chairman, we would call mayor, partnered with the County Board of Supervisors to realize the importance of the work at hand. In this, the trustees were ably assisted by Supervisor Burgess of this township. As soon as the two boards agreed upon a site, our people urged adoption of stone as the material for the structure. The hills were rich with trachytic tough stone. There were many able Italian and Swiss Italian stonemasons available, and local Chinese laborers did the hard work. At first, the use of stone was opposed by 4 supervisors, and they required a large bond. They were won over by Mr. Pithie, one of the most reliable and efficient stonemasons in the state, wrote the Star. He was awarded the contract, his bid being $14,500. And in this photo, you can see the cranes that they used before mechanization. They were just swinging poles to move the stone into place. And you can see the false forms there for the arches that were built, and then the stone built around them. The channel of the river was changed and new approaches were built.
Move it the other way.
It was the pride of the entire community and a monument to the push, energy, and enterprise of our trustees and supervisors. It was so economical to build, it became a model for all the other Napa County stone bridges. And here you can see in this picture from the St. Helena Star that they're finished with 2 arches and there's just laying down the stones for a 3rd. The triple arch bridge is 175 feet long and 18 feet wide. The stone used to build the bridge came from a local quarry on Monticello Road near Mount George in east of Napa. And this is looking at it from the Silverado Trail side. And there you can see they have a steam engine there that's helping them do some of this work. I don't know exactly, but you can see all the stones laying there. The bridge was designed for horse-drawn vehicles, but has withstood automobile traffic. It also survived the 1906 San Francisco earthquake without any damage. And here is the completed bridge. It is the largest stone bridge in Napa County and the largest over the Napa River. Here's another view looking from the Silverado Trail side. The partnership between St. Helena City Fathers and the Napa County Supervisors is seen in the plaques on either end of the bridge, listing their names. First, we have the St. Helena trustees. We know them as council persons. Dr. Henry Pond, who was the chair or mayor. Henry L. Childs, Clarence Anderson, Antonio Forney, A. Hauser, and Frank Chironi was the supervisor, and R.H. Pithie was the contractor and builder. And now the supervisors on the other end of the bridge on the Silverado Trail side. The chairman was G.W. DeWeese, supervisors Burgess, Rainey, Moser, and Wardner. And again, Frank Chironi, the supervisor, and Pithie, the contractor. These photos show the monumental task of constructing this bridge in 1894. You can see the date of 1894 on the keystone in the next photo. The bridge was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1972. And if you look at the upper right corner photo, right in the middle, there's a small 1894 that was engraved on the keystone. I took these photos last fall when there wasn't any water in the river. And you can really appreciate the beauty of this bridge when you're down in the river and looking up at it. And we have a painting of the Pope Street Bridge as commissioned by the Napa Valley Heritage Fund.
Painting.
Unfortunately, we don't have a very clear image of these paintings. Are now owned by Rienda House.
It's ugly.
In 1997, the community debated adamantly about whether to replace the bridge. It became a big debate in the newspaper, as shown by this political cartoon from the St. Helena Star. The debate ended in nothing being done, which is good. It saved our bridge. Our next bridge is the Pewter Creek Bridge in Berryessa Valley, 1896, also built by R.H. Pithie. The Napa County supervisors voted to build a new Pewter Creek Bridge on the road to Monticello. It would become the largest stone bridge west of the Rocky Mountains, and it replaced a worn wooden bridge. And here it is under construction. And you can see how they did it by building the arch forms and the stones up on top. R.H. Pithie began construction in May of 1896, as soon as the river receded. He had a crew of 40 men and several teams of horses and mules. Laborers were paid $2 per day, and stonemasons were paid $5 per day. And here you can see the completed bridge with a horse and wagon on top. The bridge was 298 feet long with 5 graceful arches. Stone came from a quarry 2 miles away. The bridge cost $20,000. A dance was given in honor of Mr. Pithie in Monticello town on October 31st, 1896. In 1957, Lake Berryessa was created by damming Pewter Creek. It submerged the town of Monticello and the bridge. In June 2012, fisherman John Daniels located the bridge in 120 feet of water. He contacted a scuba club who plunged into darkness to see the bridge. And now the Spring Valley Bridge on Silverado Trail at Taplin Road in 1901. This little bridge, Spring Valley Bridge over an unnamed creek on Taplin Road, which was formerly called Spring Valley Road, was built in 1901. And here you can see that the date is barely readable there on the left. In 1974, the bridge was widened due to the realignment of Silverado Trail. To preserve the historical image, one side of the bridge was moved over and concrete filled the gap. Now we have the York Creek Bridge on North Main Street, St. Helena, 1902 by J.B. Newman, also known as the Behringer Bridge. The city street committee had to put new boards in the Behringer in the wooden Behringer Bridge in 1895. The town's trustees voted to construct a stone bridge over York Creek at Behringer in August 1901.
Excuse me a minute for interrupting, Mariam. I'd like to remind everyone to mute their machines while Mariam is speaking. Thank you.
It is the purpose of the trustees to replace all of the wooden bridges in town with stone ones as rapidly as possible. The city invited sealed bids due by September 10th, 1901. You had to include a check for 10% of the bid, and a $500 bond was required. Submit them to Otto Behrens, who was the city clerk. And Newman won the job. The stone came from a quarry on Crystal Springs Road. The plaque on the bridge reads, the trustees were Bismarck Bruck, who was president or mayor. He is the grandson of Charles Krug. Schoenemann, Rammers, Mackinder, and Schweitzer. C.H. Wallace was the civil engineer, and J.B. Newman was the builder. In 1903, Main Street was paved all the way to the Behringer Bridge. Trustees voted to install electroliers on the Behringer Bridge in 1913 with 5 lights, just like the Sulphur Creek Bridge. Caltrans proposed to demolish the rails or sidewalls of the bridge in 2019. They were going to replace them with phony replicas of the stones, saying that stone was not an approved material for bridges. After vehement community opposition, Caltrans canceled the project. Now, the Garnett Creek Bridge on Highway 29 north of Calistoga, 1902, was enlarged in 1914 by Martini and Bognotti. The Garnett Creek Bridge is a good example of the many masonry arch bridges built in Napa County in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The original bridge, built in 1902, consisted of 1 span or arch. In 1914, the second and third spans were added to the southeast end of the bridge. The span on the left is the original, and you can see the difference in the color of the stones. The other 2 spans were built in 1914. And here's the plaque. 1914, the supervisors were Bismarck Bruck, the chairman, Alexander, Partrick, Weber, and Wassam. And the civil engineer was O.H. Buckman, and the builders Martini and Bognotti. And here we have a painting of the Garnett Creek Bridge on Highway 29 North, commissioned by Napa Valley Heritage Fund. You can still drive on this bridge after you leave Calistoga, heading up Mount St. Helena. Our next bridge is the York Creek Bridge on Spring Mountain Road, 1903, built by J.B. Newman. The York Creek Bridge was rebuilt in a stronger and better manner in 1881, but it was still of wood. The street committee had new boards installed again in 1895. Finally, bids were opened in September 1903 for the new bridges across York Creek on Spring Mountain Road and also across Spring Creek on Spring Street. J.B. Newman bid $1,200 for each, and he won the job. And here's the plaque. It's barely readable, but it says the trustees, Bismarck Bruck, grandson of Charles Krug and a future supervisor, Mr. Schoenemann, Mackinder, Rammers, and Schweinitzer. The engineer was C.H. Wallace and the builder, J.B. Newman. Now we have the Sulphur Creek Bridge on Pope Street, St. Helena, 1908, by A. Martini and Company. The trustees voted to replace the floor of the Pope Street Bridge over Sulphur Creek in 1895. The bridge had to be repaired again 2 years later. In May 1908, the trustees voted to build a new bridge across Sulphur Creek on Pope Street. A. Martini and Company won with their bid of $2,129. They had to provide a $500 bond. Martini built a lot of the stone masonry at Aetna Springs Resort. A. Martini and Company also built the new Carnegie Library at Oak and Adams Street. The bridge is the unsightly wooden affair of a bridge is no more. It was reported 2 months later. The bridge has one arch, which is 50 feet long at the base. The side walls rise to 4 feet and are finished with a coping of choice stone from the Fred Menstner Ranch in Conn Valley. And here's the plaque. Kohler was the chairman or mayor. Pritchard, Graff, Villani, and Varner. Wallace was a civil engineer, and the builders' names are listed there: Martini, Porta, and Magetti. The next bridge is the Maxwell Creek Bridge on Hardin Road in Pope Valley, 1909, by J.B. Newman. Maxwell Creek begins at a small rise on Childs Pope Valley Road. On one side is Childs Creek, which runs to the Napa River. Maxwell Creek on the other side runs to the Sacramento River. It picks up Burton and Hardin Creeks before joining Pope Creek. The underlying arch was built with a crude crane to lift the stones, as you saw in the previous pictures. Here's the plaque, erected in 1909. The supervisors were Partrick as chairman, Gordon, Weber, Bruck, and Alexander. The surveyor engineer was O.H. Buckman, and the builder, J.B. Newman. And here we have a colorful painting of the Maxwell Creek Bridge on Hardin Road, as commissioned by the Napa Valley Heritage Fund. Our next bridge is the Sulphur Creek Bridge on Main Street, St. Helena, 1910, by A. Martini and Company. This is the beautiful bridge that everyone crosses coming into downtown St. Helena. At the end of 1908, the newspaper wrote, "We hope that the dawn of the new year will see the completion of a structure in place of the unsightly and unsafe affair which spans Sulphur Creek on Lower Main Street." End of quote. Note the railroad tracks on the left in the photo. These were brand new. The sign over the road reads, $10 fine for riding or driving on the bridge faster than a walk. This meant that the newly installed San Francisco, Vallejo, and Napa Valley Railway electric interurban train tracks had to be removed. In April 1909, the City Council asked the president of the railway to partner with the town to build the new bridge. There was a debate about where to build the bridge. The plans for the stone bridge were presented by the civil engineer C.H. Wallace in July 1909. The bridge was to be 32 feet wide, those sidewalls 18 inches thick. The old wooden bridge was temporarily patched up. By October, it was clear time had run out for the year and the bridge had not been built. Finally, A. Martini and Company won the contract in March of 1910. The railroad agreed to contribute to the cost of the bridge, and 5 months later, in August 1910, the bridge was done. A new cement sidewalk was built on the western side for pedestrians, and the new railroad tracks were laid down the middle of Main Street. In this photo, we can see on the left those buildings, John Money's planing mill. The next building, and that was later Nipshills. The next building is the St. Helena livery stable, which was later Myers Chevrolet, and then it was demolished to make the Sunshine Foods parking lot. And we just came across this lovely new picture of two ladies standing on the bridge. We're looking north at downtown St. Helena. And that's what you would have seen if after the electroliers were installed in 1914 and you were standing there. That's how Main Street looked. And now we have a lovely polished granite plaque, the St. Helena City Council. Fred Varner was the chairman or mayor. Lewis Clark, Alphonse Bell, Ed Bellani, John C. Money. The engineer was C.H. Wallace and the builder A. Martini and Company. Soon after completion, it became obvious that the new bridge was 16 inches higher than the road on the north end, the town side. The city council got into an argument about whose fault that was. Finally, trustee Money said the problem would be fixed when Main Street was paved. Now, if you know that bridge and you're driving over it from the north end of it, there's a little rise there, like a little hill. And that's because the bridge was built 16 inches higher. And here's looking at the bridge now from down in the creek, which was totally dry when I took these pictures. And you can see there's a big gravel fill there. And some folks have left their mark. Caltrans again proposed to demolish the rails and sidewalls of this bridge in 2019, saying that stone was not an approved material. They were going to make phony replicas of the sidewalls. After vehement community opposition, Caltrans canceled the project. The Napa River Bridge at Zinfandel, 1913, by J.B. Newman. J.B. Newman began work in March 1913 and built this bridge for $5,400. It is an earth-filled masonry arch consisting of two spans of 43 feet each. The masonry structure is comprised of square-cut stone laid in regular rows. Both sidewalls are also constructed of cut stone. The bridge is 24 feet wide. The stone came from the Mee Quarry on the east side of the valley on Taplin Road. And here we have a lovely granite or marble plaque again. And the supervisors were Bismarck Bruck, the chairman, Partrick, Weber, Wassam, and Alexander. The engineer was O.H. Buckman, and the builder, J.B. Newman. Zinfandel is the second largest stone bridge still remaining in Napa County. It has withstood the test of time well, except that the footings were replaced. And I know it really well because I grew up down the road and I played under it quite a bit when I was little. And here we have a beautiful painting of the bridge as commissioned by the Napa Valley Heritage Fund. This is looking north. So the next bridge is the Swartz Creek Bridge on Aetna Springs Road in Pope Valley, 1912 by A.C. Martini and Company. The bridge is a single-span masonry arch bridge built in 1912. It has an earth-filled closed spandrel masonry arch and is built of square-cut stone in irregular rows. It's 54 feet long and 19.5 feet wide. It was designed by County Engineer O.H. Buckman and built by A.C. Martini, one of many masonry arch bridges in the county which survive today due to the design efforts of Buckman and the availability of high quality stone and skilled stone masons. The bridge appears unaltered and only routine maintenance has been done. And here's the plaque. The supervisors were Bruck, Hartrick, Phillips, Weber, and Alexander, the builder Martini and Company, and engineer is not mentioned. And here's a lovely painting of the Swartz Creek Bridge by the Napa Valley Heritage Fund. Now we have the Bell Creek Bridge on Crystal Springs Road, 1903, by H.W. Wing, who was at one time a partner of James B. Newman. This cute little bridge is a single span masonry arch bridge built in 1912. It has an earthquake. I'm sorry, I screwed up here. It's a one span arch bridge. I wasn't able to find out very much about the building process on this one. It's behind a fence on private property, and the road doesn't go across the bridge anymore. So it's difficult to get closer to it and find more information about it. But we did get a picture of the plaque, thanks to a friend. And you can see the supervisors were Fennell, Rainey, Ephraim Light, Bush, Vandeleur, and the engineer was Buckman, and H.W. Wing was the builder. Now we have the Whitehall Lane Bridge over an unnamed creek, and there was no plaque on this bridge. It's a beautiful little stone bridge. It looks like it has some damage to the right in this photo. Looks like our local stone again. And of course, the creek was dry when I went by. Sorry, I don't have much information about that. And our last bridge will be the Conn Creek Bridge on Yountville Crossroad, built in 1911 by J.B. Newman. The Conn Creek Bridge washed away on January 10th, 1895. The next month, Supervisor Wardner was authorized to replace the bridge. The supervisors paid J.B. Newman $1,000 in July 1911 as partial payment on the bridge, so we know he won the job and was going to start building. Newman completed the new 5-span stone bridge on September 1st, 1911. So it just took him over. The bridge was built in 50 days, like it says on the picture here. That was considered to be a record. In 1950, the bridge was widened, and the contract went to Thomas Construction for $10,890. And in 1972, Napa County asked for bids to replace the bridge. 2019, Caltrans began to replace the bridge because of scouring in the creek bed, causing settlement and damage to the structure. So what we see today is a new bridge. There are many more beautiful stone bridges in Napa County, but that's all that we have time for today. Thanks for listening, and many thanks to Jay Green and the Napa Valley Heritage Fund for use of the bridge painting images. So now I am ready to start answering questions.
Thank you, Mariam. That was great. I think it's so fun to see all of the bridges. So, usually we see these bridges, we're driving on top of them. So you don't really get the full impact of how beautiful they are, really, when you see them side by side, and see the uniqueness of those bridges. They have so many things in common, with the kind of the color palette and the style in general, but each one really is unique. And I really thought it was fun to see them all together like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have questions?
I'm looking at the chat room and I do not see any questions in the chat room.
Okay.
If anyone has a question or a comment, you can unmute yourself and pipe up. I know no one's shy.
Mhm. I'll try and answer it. If I don't have the answer, I'll send you an email.
Hey, you guys, it's Shannon. Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes, Shannon, fire away.
Hi. Well, I love some of the very interesting tidbits of information, like the pay for the Pope, for the out in Berryessa was
The laborers and the
for the
stonemasons.
laborers, $2 a day, $5 a
Yeah.
day. You also mentioned some Chinese labor on the Pope Street Bridge. Can you just say a little bit more about the interactions or what we know about the Chinese labor versus the Italian stonemasons, and just anything around
Well,
those folks who actually did the building?
I don't have these facts for sure, but I would assume that, the stonemasons were tradesmen who brought their skills over from Europe. There was a lot of unskilled labor that went into just moving stones and, doing like the heavy work. And we did have a Chinatown here in St. Helena with a lot of workers were available on West Charter Oak Avenue. So there were Chinese workers available who would be doing most of the unskilled and hard lifting, and we don't see them much in the photographs. I don't know if that's intentional or they just weren't there that day. I don't know.
And I was told years
but-
ago that the Chinese substantially built a lot of the roads out, like ink grade roads specifically was the one. I was told this so far back I can't even recall the source. But I was wondering if there was a crew, like maybe Mr. Ink ran a crew of semi-skilled or skilled laborers that specialized in these roads. And
Mr. Ink built that road because he wanted it to go to his ranch, which was up in the north, far northern Napa County. He owned thousands of acres up there and he ran sheep out there. I haven't actually seen an article about the building of that road other than, they were arguing about where should the road go. And they ended up building two roads because they couldn't agree. And I think Ink probably paid for a lot of the ink grade road himself. He had the money. So I can't speak to, who worked on the construction of that road. It was pretty far out of town. So, there were other laborers.
Mariam, it seems, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, we have another question on the chat from Shelley Smith, and she had a similar question, but a little different. She asked where the workers lived, and she asked if this is why St. Helena had such a large Chinese community.
Well, they began coming here in 1868 with the building of the railroad. So those tracks that we see today was the original track. I mean, it's not the original pieces of iron that are there today, but I mean, that railroad was built in 1868. And yes, large numbers of Chinese came to work on the railroad, and they one of the big heavy jobs to do was to excavate the gravel for the base of the rail to lay the rails on, and that gravel all came out of Sulphur Creek. So the railroad owned that whole area. That's West Charter Oak now, where We Care is, and the city courtyard, and they own a good part of Sulphur Creek as well. So they housed the Chinese workers on the railroad property, and the buildings were very rudimentary shacks that were built. I think it was built by the residents themselves. So 1868 is the time when the big groups of Chinese men began coming to St. Helena, and they they had their own stores and a Chinese temple, just house, and lodging for the workers. So that's where the workers would have lived. They didn't live amongst the general population. A few laborers in the outlying areas probably just bunked at the ranch in whatever quarters there were. But after that, after the railroad was completed, all these people were available, and here they were in St. Helena. So at the same time, all the land was being cleared for vineyards and really rapid development of vineyard lands. So rocks needed to be removed, trees were cut down, plowing, planting. That's who was available to do that kind of work in that era. So, so any type of hard, unskilled labor, backbreaking work, that would be what was people hired the Chinese people for. But if you live too far out, then probably in Angwin, for example, I think they would have probably slept somewhere up there. I don't know exactly where. I haven't heard there's a Chinatown in Angwin, but there was one in Rutherford, and certainly in Napa, and so yeah. So Valerie had a question.
It's kind of been answered. I was just wondering about the, it strikes me that we have the same kind of segregation, if you will, in quotes, now that we had 100 and some years ago. The Chinese, the Italians, the Swiss, the French, the whatever. It's interesting to me that this has probably existed from forever, because people go to where they're culturally comfortable, food, everything else. So it's interesting. But Mariam, thank you. You've done yeoman's work for our community. Thank
you, Valerie. Yeah, well, people also, lived where they could afford to live.
Of course.
They weren't living in brand new, nice houses because, they couldn't afford that. So, yeah.
And I don't think that's so different from anything anywhere. I mean, we think it's kind of unique to our area, but it really isn't. It's where people go that they have relatives or friends and the community is similar, food and the cultural practices and all. I mean, I just think that's very typical.
Yeah. Well, that's not to say that everybody in St. Helena was happy to have Chinese laborers around. We had an anti-Chinese league here.
I know.
And at one point they marched on Chinatown and demanded that the residents leave. So, yeah.
But on the other hand, who was going to do the work?
Right. Well, the vintners were very upset about this because they needed the Chinese laborers, and so there was actually some debate in the pages of the St. Helena Star about this issue, like, who's going to pick our grapes and who's going to do our pruning and who's going to.
But to me, it's interesting because it's the Chinese influence, the Italian, the Mexican, the whatever influence, and it just, I don't know that.
Yeah, we're built from diverse cultures. We really are.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we single out cultures too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Valerie.
Very interesting.
Miriam, I have a question from the chat, and it's from Janice and Marvin. And they ask, did Betty Jo March paint all of the watercolors?
No, I think each one was done by different artists, but Jay Green can maybe speak to that a little more. Jay,
thank you, Mariam. Yes, this is Jay Green speaking. First of all, I want to thank Kathleen and Mariam for a wonderfully informative presentation. This is so impressive.
Yes.
Yes, when we commissioned, I was then president of the Napa Valley Heritage Fund. And in 1999, we commissioned 9 local artists to paint the bridges. And the first bridge that you showed, Mariam, was the Pope Street Bridge. And that was painted by Vernon Nye, N-Y-E. It was a wonderful elderly man at the time. And he did a marvelous job. We tried to commission only those bridges that were not only on the national registry of historical structures, but also those that had not been altered in any way, which is why we did not commission any painting for the bridge at the south end of town, the Sulphur Creek Bridge, because that has been altered by sidewalks on one side and also other alterations. Anyway, thank you again to the St. Helena Historical Society and Kathleen and Mariam for such an extraordinarily informative presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Jay, this
Yes.
is Lorraine Stewart. And
Hi, Lorraine.
how are you?
This is a wonderful community event, isn't it?
For sure. To the question of artists, I believe one of them was also Helen Bergruen.
Yes.
And many of you will remember her. She was commissioned to paint 20, I believe it was 15 or 20 works that were in the downstairs room at the original Trabinier. And those were scenes from all over Napa Valley. And they really made that dark room come alive. And she's the sister of a guy some of you may know, John Bergruen Gallery in San Francisco, which is one of the foremost contemporary art galleries on the West Coast. And anyway, and then Betty Jo's been an artist here for 35, 40, forever, really great. And I can't remember the other artists, but great group.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well-
I tried to get a list. The paintings are now owned by Rienda House. And I did contact them to get a list of the artists, but I didn't get an answer back and I couldn't read the signatures. So,
Mariam, I can get you a list of the artists who painted each of the bridges. Yes, Helen Bergruen was one of the painters. Earl Follander did the Sonoma Creek Bridge. And there were a number of local artists at the time, and I will furnish you a list.
okay, thanks, Jay.
Anyone else?
Okay. Other questions? All right,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes,
Yeah.
and before we leave, I just wanted to remind you that I'll be posting this recording on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it again if you have anything that you're, maybe missed. And you can also catch many of our lectures that we had in 2021. So we're trying to populate that. And then also visit our website, visit the Heritage Center. Right now, we're closed for just a couple of weeks because of the pandemic situation. But you can visit our website and click that donate button. We are a complete volunteer organization, and in order to keep these presentations coming and keep the Heritage Center growing, we can all use your support, and especially the kind of support you showed tonight by showing up and being a great audience. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.